Team, there are about 6 variables that we have to get right if we're going to prepare ourselves for effective operations. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below about these variables and other things that we could add into our kit bag as we all attempt to master our craft and develop our tactical virtue. Now, the first one is we need to know and understand what our task and our purpose is. These two things, in a sense, they do kind of drive everything that we are about to set out on. You might call this your mission. And it's always a good thing to have a mission statement. You know, this is all well and good, but what we really need to understand is what are the key tasks, what are the critical things that must be accomplished in order to achieve success. You may have different phases of your operation, and each one should have this phase begins with and ends with, right? And these are all, again, all things that must happen in order to achieve success. If you have folks in your charge, they should also know what the task and the purpose is. They should know that why. You know, that why comes first. If it doesn't, everything else is going to get a little bit of jacked up on us. The next thing we need to know is to have a solid understanding of who our adversaries are, whether they are perceived or actual. What are the friction points, if you will? What are the things that are standing in our way between us and success? You know, there's a lot of people that would talk about these variables, and this one, of course, is our enemy. And they would say that civilians have no place to even discuss or put METTC in the perspective of being a civilian. And when it relates to things like the enemy, it's almost easy to understand why. In the military, for time immemorial, you've had a clear-cut enemy of the state, or combatant that you're going up against. And certainly there's been times when those have not always been easily identifiable, but we always knew kind of who we were fighting against. The guys that are shooting back at us, right? As civilians, we don't have a clear cut vision of what that is. And so I get that criticism. But I think that's looking at things too strictly, if you will. I think it's looking at things too much in a regimented format. Again, because we're going to have places and points of friction that we have to work through. Got to make it buff out somehow, right? Another criticism of METTC is the military has, set missions that they're going on and civilians don't. Again, too regimented of a perspective. This should be ingrained in our thinking for almost everything that we do. Applying these variables to everything that we do. The next one is knowing where we are in time and space. The physical locations of where everything is happening. What is it that we can describe, or how can we describe these locations, whether we're urban or out here in a wooded environment? What are the key points of terrain? What is decisive locations? How are the roads put together? How do people commute? Is there a natural heartbeat? How do the animals commute around? You may get stuck thinking about major or minor terrain features, and that's all well and good. But depending on where you're at, you may not actually have those, so you need to push back, right? We don't want to become so focused on the trees that we can't see the forest that we're standing in. Identify the larger picture, and then begin to understand all of the ways that your terrain makes sense. Hondo, no. The next one, he's trying to, it's that time of year, there's shrooms everywhere. He's just licking some, and now he's eating sticks, because that's what he does. Next thing we need to have a good understanding of is we know what our points of friction are. We need to know what's on our side, if you will. It's, you know, specifically at first, we're probably thinking about people. Are we going at something alone? Do we have compadres that are going out with us? If there is people that are helping us do something, you know, what are their competencies? What are their attributes? What are their skills? What's their knowledge? We begin to understand how our team meshes and can mesh better if we begin to really understand these things. Of course, the first person that we have to do is apply these things to ourselves, right? What are our strengths and what are our weaknesses? If we answer these things with integrity, we can begin to develop a pathway to improve all of the areas that we should be improving on. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. Sometimes we do need those people in our lives to help teach, coach, and mentor us just as much as we think it's our job to do for somebody else, right? The next one, you know, we often get stuck in thinking about is in a regimented timeline. We're talking about time here, right? Is how much time that is available to accomplish all of those critical tasks in the area that we are working in. A lot of times we may try to use some things like backwards or reverse planning, right? Begin with your end state, begin with success, and manage your time working back until the present moment. How much time do you have for rehearsals? How much time do you have to inspect your gear? How much time do you have to train on some things in order to get better at something? And train, you know, it could be as simple as watching a how-to video. But if we live a life that says that we've arrived and we never try to actually get better at the things that we're trying to do, we're kind of fooling ourselves. Make sure as you're thinking about time to the best of your ability, only spend about 1/3 of it planning and leave 2/3 for preparation and execution. Unlike many things, time is something that we can't get back. And so it's a resource that we don't want to waste. The last one, people who argue against METTC for civilians have a complete, and most of these folks who do this never even served in the military. So they don't understand the broader picture of where these variables fit in beyond just being referred back to themselves, right? A self-referential perspectives on things is only ultimately leads to demise. So we have people in our lives, right? We have our friendlies, right? We have our perceived or actual friction points or adversaries, the enemy, right? We have those two. We have our enemy and we have our troops available. Everybody else, right? Where do they fit in? How do they fit in? Your neighbors, people that you drive by on the street, shopkeepers, local law enforcement, strangers that you meet, acquaintances that you have. All of these other people that we need to take into consideration for almost every mission, large or small, macro or micro, that we could find ourselves on. Because there are unintended consequences to our actions. And there are second and third order of effects because of the things that we set into motion. Some of these folks are probably more aligned with us than against us, right? So we don't want to alienate ourselves from these people. We don't want to create enemies. We don't want to inflict damage to property or to people beyond what is absolutely critical or necessary. So we think about these things, right? I mean, it's one of our, even with just some basic rifle marksmanship, with just some basic marksmanship, right? Knowing your target and what lies beyond. The same principle applies. Knowing your terrain, knowing the people that you're working against or potentially working against, knowing the people that are working with you, knowing your time, having your task and purpose, all of these things, and what lies beyond. What else is there? We would call this civilian considerations, as that last variable. And I hope it's something that you can bear in mind as you plan, prepare, and potentially execute a plan, right? Get moving in this operations loop or cycle. Team, if there's anything, it's don't take an acronym to only refer back to itself. You know, what are the real principles that are trying to get pushed across in the variable? There's going to be, or in that acronym, there's going to be a few other principles that we're going to be looking at to discuss. And again, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below. If you didn't know, anytime that you do all of those YouTube things, my flask gets filled with the tears of a commie. And I do take great pleasure in capturing them and consuming them. And you may ask yourself, who are these commies? Well, they come in two varieties. The commie one is the stereotypical, right? All the little whiny brats who have a sense of entitlement, who push for any wide range of ideology that is ultimately anti-freedom, right? We'll leave it at that. The second one is actually folks who watch and consume this channel's content. Like, you'd be surprised at the amount of folks that I see who Bitch wanted to complain about Stoker and the content, yet keep coming back for more and more and more. It's like there's some weird S&M thing going on, and well, it's obvious who's on what side of what, and for all of you dudes, it's one more view. Team, I appreciate you guys. Till then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked. Alright, Hondo, let's get out of here. Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date with future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
We know you're out there!